Hi everyone, welcome back to Analytics Tales. This is Reza. In this video, we learn about interactive heat maps and how to create them in Excel and how to interpret them. You can see by clicking on these buttons called slicers, the colors in the table, the small icons in the corner, and all the values update automatically. This is called an interactive heat map. The first thing you want to do is open up Excel and load up your data set. Here we have a survey of 200 employees in different states of Australia about their favorite drinks. We also asked them about their annual income. Now we can create our interactive heat map. To do this, we'll need to follow a few simple steps. Step 1 is to create a pivot table. To do so, highlight all the data set, all the data in your data set, click on Insert, and insert a pivot table. As you can see, your table is selected, and he asks to put the pivot table in a new worksheet. Let's put it in a new worksheet and name it something like pivot tables. Now you have your empty pivot table created. You can add a few elements to your pivot table. In this example, let's drag and drop prepared drinks into rows. Then we can drag and drop annual income into values, and then drag and drop states into filters. We can make a few adjustments to our pivot table. For example, we can click on it and change the name of pivot table something like all states to have a better name for it, and then select all of the values, go to home and change the format to dollar values. We can decrease the number of decimal points, and we can see here that the sum of annual income of all people who selected apple juice is $645,000. Let me zoom in. So, and for coconut water drinkers, the total annual income is about $800,000. This is not a very useful measure in our example. Let's right click and change the values, summarize values by averages. Now we can see that the average income of apple juice drinkers is about 49,000, while coconut water drinkers are about $55,000. Step 2 is make a few copies of the original pivot table. Let's select our pivot table, Control-C or Command-C in Apple computers, and paste it somewhere with a few rows in between the pivot table, and name this new pivot table as one of our states. The first one, we name it NSW or New South Wales. And we can change the filter here to just New South Wales. So for example, we can see that the average of annual income of all people in New South Wales who drink apple juice is $44,000. Let's repeat the process for other states as well. Remember, always leave a few rows in between the pivot table. Sometimes when you play with the slicers, they may overlap. Let me paste it here and change from all to Queensland. Then we can have another copy and paste it here. And in this case, let's format it as South Australia. Then let's make another copy. We go up, select our original pivot table and paste it. But it didn't copy and paste completely. include the filter in your copy. Let's paste it somewhere here and name it and filter it to our other state. In this case, Victoria. Make another copy and name it, in our example, Western Australia. We can make changes to name of our pivot tables. The first one, if you go to pivot table analysis, you can see that the name is all states. The second one, we named it New South Wales. Let's name the third one Queensland, QLD. Name the next one SA or South Australia. The next one Victoria. And the last one Western Australia. Step 3 is to create a new sheet and add the necessary information. Add a new sheet by clicking on this plus sign at the bottom, and you can name it something like Heatmap or Interactive Heatmap for your reference. Now you have an empty sheet. Let's add a few values to it, a few information there. So, for example, we can go to our pivot table, go to our original pivot table, copy the favorite links from there, and paste it into your heat map. I prefer to paste it as values, paste the spatial as just values, in case there is an issue when copying or we have copied something extra. Then let's add a few information for columns. The first one, we can name it all states. Then we name the next column New South Wales. We have Queensland. We have South Australia. We have Victoria. And we have Western Australia in our example. We can add a few more information, something like calling this column favorite links, or we can merge all of these columns together and name it average income of employee. We can format it, for example, format this cell as heading 1, format all of these cells as heading 2 to make them nicer. Let's bold them the favorite links. Let's increase the width of the columns. Something else that we can do is select the whole table and add a border for it to make it more clear. Let me insert a row there to make them stand out. You can format your table the way you like. You can add any information that you want, or add any kind of borders that you feel that makes your table nicer. In this step, step 4, we want to link our table to the data that is in our pivot tables. So click on the first cell, all states and apple juice. Type in equal sign to let Excel know that you want to put an equation or a formula there. Go to your pivot table and click on the first cell next to apple juice. Remember, we are going to the pivot table that is about all states. It is not just about one state, for the one that have all the states. And click enter. You can see that a formula is created there. In essence, it says that get pivot data, get information from our pivot table, which is called annual income. Go to cell A3 and pick from the preferred ring pick the apple juice. We need to make a few minor adjustments to this formula to make it nicer and more easily copied. So something that we need to change is, instead of saying apple juice, we delete that part after the second comma and then click on our first cell, apple juice. So instead of saying everything that contains apple juice, we say that anything that contains the value in that cell, in our case, it contains apple juice. So the value didn't change, but we made the formula in a way that we can copy it. There is something else that we need to do, is try to avoid errors as much as possible. In our example, we need to make sure that if any of the values is empty, the table does not show an error there. So to prevent that, we click on the first part of our formula before get pivot data. We type if error. And we say that if there is an error, if the value is empty or whatever error that it comes up, we can ask Excel to put any values that we like. We can put NA, or we can ask Excel to put a 0 instead, in case there is an error there. Then you can go to the corner of the cell and drag it down to make a copy of the formula. Now everything is perfect. For example, when the sparkling water is selected for all states, we can see that the average annual income is $51,000. Let's stop for a moment. Do not change the format. Whenever we created all of the data in our heat map, then we are going to format them all together. So let's repeat the process for all other states. For New South Wales, we click on equal sign. We go to our pivot tables. We have a pivot table for New South Wales. We click on the first one, which is about apple juice. It doesn't matter which one we select. Press enter. Then we go to the cell. We change from apple juice to the address of this cell which contains apple juice. This helps us to copy our data. We add something about errors. If error, then give us 0 and we close it. Then we can drag it down and make copies. You can see that for New South Wales, we do not have any observation or any person who drank coconut water. Same goes with milkshake. Repeat it for Queensland. Go to our pivot table, click on the first one, make minor changes, delete the last part, click on apple juice, enter, go back, add if error, and then add a comma 0 at the end and paste it there. So let me pause recording and fill up the table. Now you can see that I have filled the table for all other states. I have made a copy of the formula for your reference and put it here. Formula has a few parts. First part is if error. We are saying that if there is an error to getting data, put a 0. Getting the pivot data from table of annual income to the table, go and take the A3, and then the prepared drink is B4, apple juice in our example for all states. So you can copy the formula and make necessary changes to the addresses or to the pivot table name, and then make your table. So now we have all of the information there. Let's get rid of unnecessary information. Let's format our table again. In our example, I want to add that frame. Then for all of the cells, I want to make them as values, dollar values, and then get rid of unnecessary decimal points. Now we have all of the necessary information in our table to create our heat map. Select all of the values, all of the necessary values that you want. Go to conditional formatting. It provides you with a few options. If you want to highlight some of the cells, highlight some of the bottom, top or bottom cells in terms of the values. For example, top 5% or top 10% or bottom 5%. You can add data bars, something like this. When the value is bigger, it has a larger bar. Something else is adding icons. For example, this type of icons. The smaller values are red, the largest values are green, and the average values are amber. Another option that you have is go to conditional formatting and select one of the color scales. For example, this one, the smaller values are white, the larger values are red, and any color in between. I like to go conditional formatting, go to color scales, add more rules, and say that the lowest value that I have, I want it to be white, and the largest value to be a copper color, this one. And I click on OK. And now I have a very simple heat map. You can choose your color coding. Sometimes I really like to add one of the icon sets to it as well. For example, these bars, we have bar ratings. The smallest values do not have any field bar, and the largest values are fully filled. Now I can click on these and create my heat map. You can see that you can, for example, this area is hotter than the other areas, meaning that the average income of employees who drink coffee is larger than the other groups. Or for example, this group in South Australia who drink lemonade has the highest average income. Now we are almost there. We need to make our heat map interactive. To do so, we need to add some additional features. Step 8 is to add slicers. Go to the pivot table sheet, click on one of the pivot tables, does not matter which one you select, click on slicers, and it gives you all of the variables in your data set. In my example, I like to select work status and click on OK. It adds a new slicer, which is called work status, and we can see that it has full-time, part-time, and stationary staff. I cut it and paste it into my heat map sheet, make necessary adjustment. If I do not like the color, I go to slicers and change the color formatting, the size, the adjustment, anything that we want. I like to make it copper color. You can see by clicking on these buttons, the value for all states is updated, but just for that color. To make it connected to all of the other columns, you need to connect it to other pivot tables. There are a few ways that you can do. Select your slicer, right click on it and click on report connections, or go to report connection. And you can see that you have a list of all of the pivot tables in your worksheet. So we click New South Wales, pivot Queensland, South Australia, Victoria, And probably this one, which we didn't name it correctly, is for Western Australia. We have the information there. We click on these slicers and we can see all the information is updated automatically. And there you have it. You have just created an interactive heat map using slicers and pivot tables in Excel. With a little bit of practice, you will be able to create all sorts of interactive heat maps that will help you visualize your data in new and exciting ways. But one more important thing is being able to interpret the heat map. Adding the slicers and making the heat map interactive help you study the dataset from different angles. Once you have created a heat map in Excel and added the slicer to it, you can interpret the data by following these steps. First, you need to understand the color coding. The colors in the heat map represent the magnitude of values. Typically, the darker colors indicate higher values and lighter colors indicate lower values. Second, use the slicers to filter the data. Slicers allow you to filter the data based on a specific criteria. For example, you can use the created slicer to filter the data by work status in our example. Third, analyze the pattern. Once you have filtered the data using the slicers, you can analyze the patterns in the heat map. Look for areas that have high values and try to identify the factors that may contribute to these values. Similarly, look for areas with low values and try to identify the reasons for low values. For example, for part-time employees, we can see that many of the cells have 0 values or no values at all. It means that in our sample, we do not have anyone who is part-time worker drink apple juice in any of the states. Fourth, you can draw conclusion based on your analyses. For example, you might conclude that a particular product category, in our example, for favorite drink, is performing well in some of the states and regions. Fifth, you need to communicate the insight. Using this heat map or probably accompanying some other interactive charts to our analysis, you can get some insights into your data. That is all about interactive heat maps. Thanks for watching and don't forget to come back for more Excel tutorials. Thank you.